Everyone, this is Tuesday, October 4th. This is a meeting of the School District of Waukesha School Board Teaching and Learning Committee. First, can we verify that the meeting's been properly posted?
Yes.
Thank you. And our first item on the agenda tonight is approval of the teaching and learning minutes from the September 6th meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Kozlowski. Seconded by Mr. Moore. All right, seeing no comments, all in favor say aye. Aye. Passes 5-0, thank you. We're now at the point in the meeting where we have an opportunity for the public to speak. We have one speaker tonight who will be allowed up to 5 minutes to complete their comments. Will be notified at 3 minutes. We expect our speakers to honor our time limit, refrain from using any inappropriate language, and be respectful in their comments. Speakers who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking at future board or committee meetings. Speakers are here to address the board, not the audience. This board committee does not endorse any comments made by members of the community here tonight. We would like to remind our community members of the impact of their words on others and that our children are watching. We commit to communicating with you in respectful and productive ways and ask that you do the same. We also expect that the audience will be respectful of the speaker and of the board and refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering, applause, or other behavior that will detract from the meeting. Please note that no obstructions can be created between the board and the audience. Visual aids cannot be used, and the area behind the speaker and podium shall be clear during public comment. Also, out of respect to our speaker tonight and our meeting participants, please remember to silence your cell phone at this time. Our first speaker tonight, our only speaker tonight, is Lindsay Fleck. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak and for your service that you do all year round to our schools. So thank you so much. I'm here, just want to start with a request to just please commit to hearing the info I'm sharing without shutting down because you hear a word you don't like, okay? I'm going to do the same with you, and I'm trying to do the same with you in all of my communication. So I've been doing a review of kind of the info around student achievement, and this isn't unique to Waukesha, but I think it's really important for us to understand and recognize. Our schools in Waukesha and in most places where 50% or more students are labeled as economically disadvantaged are struggling to get to 25% proficiency in literacy. And that's not post-COVID, that's the last 4 years. These schools also tend to report the highest number of behavioral referrals. We know that for many people who work in mental health and who do research in mental health, there's been found that poverty is in many ways considered to be an ongoing form of trauma that can have an impact on ability to learn new things, that can have an ability on cognitive load capacity, and on working memory, which affects the ability to transfer information to long-term memory and to not have to reteach things. I'm pointing these out not because I want us to look at people differently, not because I want us to have different expectations. I'm pointing this out because we have to teach the learners who are in front of us. And when I'm looking at the schools that I know that are experiencing these conditions, they have the highest rate of teacher turnover. They have the highest rate of micromanagement by leadership. And that concerns me. And I'm not here because I'm trying to accuse or find blame or label a school, but I'm seeing it everywhere I look. I see it in Milwaukee, I see it where I go in Minneapolis, and I have concerns about us doing things the same way everywhere. I know that there's a lot of feeling around looking at people as groups, and I understand that. I don't want to look at people as groups either. I want to look at people as people, and I want to find the common ground. But we do have to look at people as individuals for what they bring to the table. And we do have to keep that in mind when we're putting policies in place and when we're putting instruction in place. And my concern comes around most decisions relating to things like fidelity of delivering curriculum. It doesn't work in the schools I'm talking about. We've been focused on it for the last 10 years in education with RTI. And most of the schools, I should say 15, it's been more than 10 years, that were in a bad place then are still in a bad place now. that concerns me, that tells me we need to do something very differently for our students. And we need to look at them as individuals. I know that you are working hard to do better for our students, and I appreciate that. But a lot of this comes down to us looking differently at how we do education. We are here to serve the needs of the population that comes into our buildings, wherever they are, whatever they need. And we do that by having educators and leaders who look at them as individuals and not as people in charge of reporting on fidelity to delivery of a lesson plan or a curriculum. So I am asking that when you're looking at what we are coaching around, what we are supporting teachers and schools around, please look at how we're serving the individuals and how it's affecting them as people. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, you probably noticed that we have a shorter than usual agenda tonight, so we're moving into our content areas, and we'll be talking about math all night. I can't say that I'm super disappointed about that, but we did have some other topics that we weren't quite ready to report out on, so those are being moved to, what's next month, November. So we'll be bringing up some of those in November. So tonight we have on the agenda 3 different items for math. They are all related to Integrated Math 3 and request to approve secondary math course additions at the Math 3 level. We do have them agendized separately, but I think for purpose of discussion, in talking with Mrs. Landish, it would be appropriate to kind of integrate, no pun intended, the conversation around the 3 different courses, if that makes sense. So perhaps we could just start with some conversation. We've had, this is the 3rd time now, actually it's beyond the 3rd time because we've talked about integrated math quite a bit, but we could kind of get started with some questions or clarification and then take the actions as appropriate. Anybody want to get us started? Mrs. Kozlowski, thank you.
Thank you. So I've been spending quite a bit of time in a different scope, just looking at math in particular, especially with some of the layers that we're trying to build in. And I'm also trying to take a look at a lot of the curriculum that we're adding in, which is giving our staff a better means and tools to be able to teach. But I'm coming back today with some concerns regarding overall learning loss. And when we start to take a look at implementing new curriculum that is in some degree trying to excel students forward with options that are focusing on where their career choices are going to be, giving them almost a matrix that comes in as a freshman year to kind of pick and choose where they're going. My holdback right now is that I'm concerned that the students are not coming in prepared. So even by the time that we're coming in to make the decision for this next school year to implement a new program where students have the options to be able to build on this over their high school career and get their 3 courses, I don't see that their achievement is enabling them to even be successful to build a matrix that could get us to this point, which then levels us to now we don't have students that can and will enroll in these programs because they just won't be able to succeed in them. And so one of the items that I will bring up later as a future recommendation is how are we managing where we are right now with achievement to get our students to a point that when we take a look at secondary education, they're set up to succeed, and right now we're not. It makes trying to implement this a really tough decision for me, just knowing that I want, just like every other parent here, our students to succeed. I want to give our advanced learners an opportunity to advance at their pace starting middle school through high school, but we do have a large population that just is not prepared coming in to be able to pick and choose successfully, even to understand what that means for their career choice. So I will open it there.
Sure. Oh, were you going to say something?
Go ahead.
Okay. So just a couple of pieces on that. So we just, for the first year, implemented.
Is your mic on, Rachel?
Oh.
Or at least, I guess it
I
is.
think
Yeah, I
it's
couldn't
on.
hear you.
I'll just move it closer. This was our first year implementing Appendix D, which we presented last month, and that was really our first way to target some of what you're talking about, right? Which is, what is the measure of achievement that's aligned to some of these changes? And in year one of implementing that new curriculum, we did see incredible achievement results in comparison to what we have seen in years past. So I think that the trajectory that we've seen in just one short year has leveraged very promising results. Additionally, when it comes to some of those choices, I think it's important to note a couple of things. To your point about students' readiness levels, if we look at that quantitative reasoning course versus the integrated 3 with statistics, one of the biggest questions that that team grappled with was the idea of, do all students need Algebra 2, right? That was formerly what students took their junior year. That is a college level class. It's incredibly rigorous and it's very content heavy. This quantitative reasoning course was really established for students who might not need that level of mathematical thinking, but are really looking at more real world math applications. And so when it comes to our students ready to make that decision for themselves, right, their sophomore year, we put a lot of time, thought, and energy into how we schedule our students. And so counselors, teachers are working with students around those recommendations to help them to decide what is the best pathway for you. Additionally, if students choose a pathway, right, that they take, for example, quantitative reasoning their junior year, it doesn't stop them from saying, my senior year, I think that I want to move into integrated math 3 with statistics. They can do that. And so I think in this district, we have had a history of really valuing student choice. And this framework, I think, is a really happy balance between trying to tighten up some of that choice while also keeping, right, towards that junior and senior year, those choices available to them. Based on the fact that they are, right, they're heading into college and career where some of those decisions are going to be their own. It doesn't limit their ability. It doesn't track them into a specific lane. That junior and senior year, they can still move around. I would say the accelerated track locks them in a little bit tighter, but they do still have the ability depending on that readiness factor. Additionally, the last point, I think we all have concerns about our overall math achievement in the district, K-12. I don't think it's just a secondary piece. And to that end, again, we are piloting a math curricular resource in our middle school level. We are tackling a lot of professional learning with our teachers on the art of teaching mathematics. The new standards were just released in 2020. And so, again, aligning our instruction to the rigor of that standard is something that we're taking very seriously.
Mr. Zenobia.
Ms. Harmon, you said that there was a jump in achievement from the last year. Are we talking about the integrated math one that was?
Correct.
So we did see a big leap
Correct.
forward.
We exceeded the national norm on the MAP standardized measure, as well as when we looked at our common assessments that are developed in accordance with that resource, we saw a steady increase in our students' performance. And that was, I can reshare Appendix D with all of you as well. Yeah.
Is that primarily just the 9th grade, though, that we're speaking of, or are we talking across the board?
That was any student who took integrated 1. So we do have a healthy number of students in our 8th grade level who take integrated math 1. They are part of that accelerated track, and then mostly 9th grade students.
Just one more clarifying thing. When we're talking about the kids on an accelerated track, how many students are in that, and where are they accelerating to? The reason I ask that is because when I look at how we're putting integrated math 1 in this year, last year, 2 this year, it seems, and this is just going off the graph of what we were provided some time ago, it seems that it's not really until maybe the junior year that they start to choose some of these other pathways.
Correct.
Is that too late for them to really, for some students, if they're not being exposed to, I don't know, more rigorous courses, how then are they going to all of a sudden in their junior year say, oh, wow, I really love math?
Yep.
I mean, are we capturing, for one, how many kids would we say are on an accelerated path? And,
Yep.
how many more could we capture
Yep.
by getting this maybe even down to the middle school level?
Yep. So currently this year, for example, we have 91 students at Butler who are enrolled in 8th grade in our integrated math course. We have 49 students at Les Paul who are enrolled, 45 students at Horning, including 11th, 7th graders, and then 26 who are enrolled at STEM. So those are this year's numbers. I can get you previous year's numbers as well. So that's this year's integrated math one. I think it would be, in terms of, to speak to your second question about the accelerated options, I'm going to show that graphic that you have seen many times, but to talk through that. Oh. So as you can see here, maybe you can't see here if you're like me. So as you can see here, in 5th grade, we have a process in place where in 5th grade, if a student is demonstrating advanced mastery of skills, that student, in conjunction with a parent, the counselor, the teacher, can be recommended right away moving into 6th grade to move into this accelerated math 7-8. This is a very small percentage of our students that take this, but as a 6th grader, they're taking this math 7-8 course. In 7th grade, they then move into integrated math 1 if they're on the accelerated track. In 8th grade, they move into integrated math 2. And then in 9th grade, already as a freshman, they're making these decisions. Again, this is a very small percentage of our population. Our most accelerated track, so most of our students who are on an accelerated track move into Math 6 as a 6th grader. Then they move into accelerated Math 7-8 as a 7th grader. In 8th grader, they move into integrated Math 1, and those were the numbers I just shared with you. And then in 9th grade, they're in integrated Math 2. Then those choices again start to open up to them. Additionally, aside from the achievement measures, I think it's important, and again, I know this was in Appendix D, so I don't want to be too repetitive, but we did put in some of the measures that you're talking about, Mr. Zenobia, around students' perceptions of math. We are measuring those. We measured them in fall and additionally in spring, and now we will continue to collect them each spring. Things like, right, do I value math? Do I think I'm good at math? Is math useful to me? Because we know that students' perceptions of how they view themselves as mathematicians most certainly impacts their desire to be in a math class. And so we are monitoring additional measures aside from just achievement. We're measuring instruction in math classes, so we have an instructional tool that we use when we go into a math classroom specific to math practices that we should see. And then, again, just the way in which we're talking to students, talking to families. If you asked any of the counselors, I go to all of their counselor meetings. I have been for the last year. I was just there this past October. And we're talking to the counselors about how are you talking to kids when we schedule about these math options, these math courses, because again, they're all new. So we have a lot of layers in place. And then we're working with our principals to make sure that their communication to families about all of these options as we get to that, those upper level courses are made clear to families as well.
Mrs. Kozlowski.
I just want to get back to, when I look at this, I mean, when you read through all of this, it sounds great. Where I'm still coming back to is it's almost like I'm never even going to try that. I'm wondering if it's premature when we don't have students that at the fundamental math achievement that they need to be at regardless, when we're not there yet, and we want to layer in something that gives them paths, that it's really focusing on a smaller population, but the broader population is still not hitting our fundamental targets of just basic proficiency. I'm struggling with that because looking at this and, you know, my daughters are relatively great in math. I'm not. And I hear when you talk about like the perceptions as it is scary, right? The mathematicians and math can be a different thing. But we have an obligation to get our kids proficient on basic math scores first before we can even start to give an enhanced matrix to them of options to become and really craft that based on their careers. Because a lot of our students, and I will say the majority of them, are not going to be in a larger math field, that they're going to be pushing a lot of this, and we have such a large gap of just not hitting those numbers. So I'm fearful that doing something like this is not going to help us move that achievement gap just to get our kids proficient. I think we're focusing on a smaller group and then into some degree potentially holding back those that are off the charts, right? That those students that are just gifted and talented and naturally can go farther than what we have, and we need to be able to support them too.
Mr. Como.
So we require 3
Correct.
math classes for
3
graduation, right?
Yes.
And isn't this particular class targeted for more the catch-all kind of, maybe not the quite as serious math
The quantitative
student?
reasoning course?
Yes.
So I think.
This is
again,
more for your average person. You still need to get that 3rd credit, but
So I would say, again, these courses are all rigorous in nature. I would say, going back, Carrie, to your point, the purpose really of these 3 different pathways is to catch all students. So that integrated 3 with trig, right, that purpose is to catch the student who is, I am on that accelerated track, I am ready for that next opportunity, and I don't want to be in a class where I'm going at a pace that I'm far more advanced around. That middle class, right, is really centered on preparing a student to be able to go into a pre-calc option, or if I decide to go into a math pathway, they're going to be set up to do that. That quantitative reasoning course is not setting a student up. If that student wanted to move into pre-calc, they would need to take an additional course before they would be ready to move into that course. It's not to say that that course is a dumbed-down course. It's not to say it's not rigorous, but it's not setting students up with that content knowledge to prepare them for pre-calc. So I think that those pathways are, our goal is to provide all of our different types of learners, our students who, again, I'm ready to take an accelerated course, to my career pathway or my math pathway I'm not needing that, an option.
you said that better than me.
Can I also add something to Kelly's point? I hear you about the learning loss, and I'm glad you're asking about it. It shows where your focus is. I believe this integrated timeline and this scope and sequence was highly proactive by the team, especially with the adoption of the 2020 standard. So I would say that the sequence takes, as listed, right, an integrated approach so that the curriculum is not just in a box, isolated algebra, geometry. So the fact that students are going to get a spiraling, in essence, of curriculum over time, I think will absolutely address your learning loss. What I also think will address it, Ms. Kozlowski, is our resource of Agile Mind. So if you think about what teachers were using for scaffolds and to help both the fringes, both the advanced learner and the reluctant learner, if you will, they had to make a lot of that on their own. And our resource is loaded with built-in scaffolds that allow the teacher to have readily accessible resources, and I don't think we can underestimate that as a resource for catch-up. So I just wanted to point that out, too.
And that resource would be used to support all 3 of these courses. Mr. Moore, I think, had a question.
Markel, did you want to jump in?
You answered it.
Oh, okay.
But I wanted to just say, because you answered my question, so before I even got to ask it, so thank you. But I wanted to say that thank you for answering my question, because one of the things I was concerned with too with Ms. Kozlowski was the learning loss that not just unique to this district but everywhere around, but also the quantitative reasoning course specifically. By you breaking it down the way you did, I like the fact that those middle students who are the majority, that they won't get lost. And so we're not just specifically targeting those gifted and talented students, because I was a middle student, and I'm pretty sure most of us were, and stuff. So, this will be the course that they can take. And I like the stages that it did lay out, so I feel more comfortable with the desired results, and then the evidence, and then the enduring understanding, all of those things. And then also it has the 3 learning targets for the students that's going to make it applicable to their learning and also skill mastery. So I hope that this if it is approved, I just hope that like Ms. Kozlowski said, going forward, how we measure the results, and what measurements are we going to use to measure the matrix with this, and to see student achievement. So and then also what will be the option again if students do want to take quantitative reasoning, but let's say that they don't want to take a full year course of senior year? I think you did offer those semester courses following senior year last time you were here. I remember that. So
Correct. So those are still in development. Currently, what we have on the books that has been approved are, we have AP Statistics, Industrial Math, Pre-College Math. But we have a team of teachers that will be working this year to have that conversation. Those courses wouldn't be officially, those pathways wouldn't be officially in place until the 24-25 school year. So we have a team that will be coming to you probably near the spring with some official course offerings. Right now, we've had some conversations about data science, math with a business applications, and then math for healthcare professions. So we're looking to see what are kind of the math fields that are up and coming, but we have not developed a final version of what those courses would be yet.
okay, then my follow-up question, I just have one more, Dr. Getzke, I'm sorry. My follow-up question with that is for students that do take the quantitative reason, let's just say that those are the students that take it, and they say, well, you know what, before they get to quantitative reason, they say, well, you know what, maybe I want to take the rigorous course, like you say, we're letting students choose. Will there be parameters in place that say, hey, looking at their scores before or their academics before freshman, sophomore year, what grades did they receive, in freshman year math courses or sophomore year math courses to get into the accelerated junior course? Are there parameters in place to say, maybe, take this quantitative reasoning course because maybe you didn't do so well freshman, sophomore year? Because I don't want the student being set up like Ms. Kozlowski said for failure. Not saying that they will, but I'm just saying, are there metrics in place even for students to choose and say, you have to have this grade or this standard or this score to even get in these type of courses?
Yeah, that's a great question. We don't have formal prerequisites for any of our courses. Instead, we really do rely on, again, our teachers are kind of the front line in terms of recommendations for what students should take based on they are closest to knowing how their students performed and what that next course in the sequence is. We also obviously always rely on our parents and guardians. If they feel like their child is ready to take that next level class, they can override just about any decision that we would recommend. And then lastly, again, the counselors play a role, especially at the high school level, of participating in that conversation. I know, again, at the high school level, we have lots of conversations with kids about stretch classes, about number of AP courses that they're taking. And so that's all part of the equation, but we don't have a formal prerequisite that's required for any of our courses. Good question.
Mr. Como.
Getting back to the quantitative reasoning course suggestion. First of all, I appreciate the UBD and the effort that went into it. I do like that format. It's clear, concise. I do enjoy that. So I'm just going to pick this one sentence here, maybe a couple. And I think this is this is at the heart of why this particular course. So quantitative reasoning is the application of foundational mathematical skills, which is the one thing that you're concerned about, Ms. Kozlowski, and I can understand that concern. To analyze, to the analysis and interpretation of quantitative information, numbers and units, in real-world context to strengthen mathematical abilities that students will need in the classroom, their careers, and throughout their lives. So this is, in the olden days, and I'm old, it's applied math. I guess it's a fancy way to say applied math. And those types of courses, I think, I've always appreciated. Having that particular pathway available for students, especially if you know you're not going to be heading down a real stringent math path for your career. One of the focuses, too, is that this course is intended to re-energize students' interest in math. So my hope is that this will be a popular course for those of us who aren't mathematicians for life, and that this would be a real strong, this would get quite a few students that would take this course. And I would imagine that was part of, what you guys were trying to plan.
Absolutely. Yeah, 4 credits of math is right. We want kids staying in math through their senior year. There's a huge benefit to that. And so, again, to your point, Mr. Como, having them in that course and then ideally having them pick some additional courses their senior year would be great. We want them in 4 credits of everything, core related.
So you're intentional about the design of this and
Absolutely.
Focused on trying to, target those non-mathematical, career-oriented people with this course.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If I could, maybe I have some, just some observations and thoughts that I'd like to kind of share with the committee. And first to thank Mrs. Herman and Mr. Paczynski for spending so much time with me. We've talked a lot about this curriculum and a lot about integrated math in general, in particular integrated math 3. I've probably asked all of the questions that we've heard here tonight and maybe to an order of magnitude, so thank you for your patience with me. There's a couple of things that just kind of are in the back of my mind. So kind of to the point that Mr. Como was just making, one of my concerns is that we're solving the differentiation problem at the end. And that's a concern for me because we're not talking about tracks here, we're talking about rails, right? We've got integrated 1, 2, 3, and you have to step through these rails. And we interchange the words pace and acceleration and achievement, but we can't, because you're going to have kids that learn at one pace and can absorb concepts and have a good group and they're engaged and they're moving in one direction, and you're going to have another group that's disengaged and unable to absorb same concept, same class. So one of my concerns, and so when let me step back, when I look at all this, I'm thinking about who's going to take these classes and how are they going to get there? And what we're talking about is 7 years of education, 6th grade through 12th grade. So we're not just talking about, well, what are these juniors going to take for their 3rd math elective? We're talking about what has to happen in 4th and 5th grade so that these kids know what math is available to them and how they're going to apply that over the course of that 7 years. That's a big deal to me. Mm-hmm. And so when I look back at a little bit of the history, and I wasn't even here when Agile Mind was approved. That was January 2021. I am going to concede the fact that although we are talking about integrated math, which is built on a foundation of Common Core, whether you like or hate Common Core, I don't know that we've seen a tremendous amount of evidence that says this has been the game changer in math that we all expected, but we have a high-quality resource that's modularized that we can use to our advantage. So I'm going to accept the fact that we've purchased a high-quality resource, but I'm going to keep pushing on this issue that we have to fit this integrated math stuff in the box, because I'm with you with algebra geometry, but after that, I'm not. And up to that, I'm kind of not. So I think we need to just kind of talk through some of these things. One of my big concerns, and this is, it just unfortunately it goes all the way back to middle school, right? The house system forces us into a structure where sixth grade math is undifferentiated, with the rare exceptions where kids are either known to be highly accelerated or they're being identified by a teacher or a parent to go into that accelerated math 7-8. That means that somebody has to be advocating for that student, somebody, and I don't know who that is. And I don't know that parents and teachers all agree on who that is. So unless somebody's advocating, and first of all, thank you very much, Rachel, for providing all the data that I asked for on short notice. I'm really grateful. And it gives me great insight. So it's about 25%, 20 to 30% of our middle school students who may find themselves in integrated math in middle school, which is good, right? So what that means, though, and if I look at the forward exams, 30% of our kids are actually proficient on the forward exam. So if we're talking about Math 6, and I have to go back to Math 6 in order to talk about integrated Math 3. If we're talking about Math 6, and everybody's in the same class with the exception of those kids who have been advocated to be ahead or are getting the additional assistance that they need, we've got a classroom full of students where only 30% of the kids are functioning at grade level, and we are calling that sixth grade math. That's a huge concern to me, because now we're not pacing kids to the level that they can achieve. We're pacing kids to the level that as a group they're capable of learning at. And so what I kind of discovered through this process was that we're missing what we used to call high math or honors math, and we can debate what those words mean to different people all day long. But if we don't have the right pacing options for kids who are in the top 30th percentile, the bottom 30th percentile, nobody's going to learn. So that's my concern with integrated math. And so now we're talking about, instead of, you do a year and a half of math in a year, and then you do a year and a half of math in a year, you've got sixth graders that are bumping up with eighth graders. Or now you've got eighth graders who, and I know it's a small number, but might be capable of taking a high school course. There's not enough kids in that middle school to create the class. So they're either taking e-achieve or they're not taking math, which is the worst case with your high achieving kids. So I feel like the whole process from sixth grade to ninth grade is really kind of broken. And also, having had a lot of middle schoolers over the last 6 or 7 years, it's a really important time. So I think this gets back to Mrs. Kozlowski's point. So now we're up to ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. I actually think the quantitative reasoning course, which is not integrated math 3, it's quantitative reasoning, is a great math option for the third year of math for our high school students. But I would argue that it's not integrated math. It's a different subset of math topics that would satisfy a third year of math. So then I have to look at integrated math 3 with statistics, integrated math 3 with trig, and when I look at what our sophomores, juniors, and seniors who are, destined for STEM fields or high-achieving math students, integrated math 3 with trig is honors algebra 2 and honors pre-calc. I wouldn't want to take that class in 1 year. That's a tough class. And I mentioned this last month, but if you don't know trigonometry, you can't learn calculus. So, again, Rachel, thank you very much, and you and Dan answered my questions, but if we're going to take 2 years of advanced math and compress it into one, something's not getting taught, and it's not clear what that is. So I do want to make sure that our AP Calc AB and BC kids not only have classes to take, because I think this integrated math 3 with trig is actually going to deter a lot of students from going down that AP Calc path. Mm-hmm. So that's my concern, is that we're not going to have enough kids in the AP classes in the first place, so they're not going to have something to take. And then, how do they get back on track? So the idea of an AP pre-calc, if that were ever available, I think that would be highly attractive to kids, but we don't know that. So we're trying to plan these integrated 3 classes when we don't actually know what else is going to be out there. And then I think, as I've learned more about the accelerated math model that's been implemented at some schools, I just don't completely understand why we're moving away from what we already have to something so different, as opposed to trying to meet people where they are. And I know I've been talking for a while, but I just can't think about integrated math 3 without going all the way back to 5th grade and keep asking the question of, how do we know what kids need in 6th grade? And I can't imagine that one big house full of 6th graders learning math is the right way to get everybody on the right track. Okay, so there. So my questions are, how do we know that we're serving our students to their highest potential when we're only offering these grade level rungs of the ladder?
Sure, okay, that's right. I just think about, right, we could ask that question about literacy, we could ask that question about all of our content areas, and so that's right, as like secondary director, that's running through my head, and so I'm trying to keep this math specific. So first I want to talk about that 5th to 6th grade math transition. So we have a process in place, it's documented, it's shared with our counselors. Again, they are primarily the group that facilitates that conversation with the 5th grade math teachers. All of our all of our elementary buildings have a math coach. That math coach also knows what that process looks like. So we have, again, clear data points that we look at around 5th grade math achievement. We have a clear communication timeline on when that should be happening, when you're looking at the data points, who you should be talking to in terms of parents, guardians, counselors, to have that conversation about that readiness of if a 6th grader should be moving to that math 7-8 track. So in terms of like who knows about this process and who's talking to people about this process, again, because we don't have, right, 20% of our students who are in that track to move from math 5 to taking math 7-8 as a 6th grader, we rely on the individual counselor, teacher, and math coach to initiate contact with the individual parent. We don't do massive district, publications. We don't, because it's such a small percentage of students. Now, if we have a parent who reaches out to the school and says, right, I want to know more about this, or I think my child is being challenged, again, we completely entertain those conversations with the stakeholders whom I just mentioned. So that's that math 5 to 6 transition, and I'd be happy, I can share that document and that process with you, but every year, Rose Palmer, who's our elementary district math coach, my goodness, I'm sorry, she is the one who often spearheads that process with our math coaches and then with those elementary administrators and counselors. When we talk about differentiation in the 6th grade math classroom, like many of our core areas, we operate around a workshop approach. And so the way in which we differentiate is through that lens, in which all students are provided a grade level mini lesson. And then it's our expectation that within that 6th grade math classroom, our teachers are running small group instruction, they're conferring with students, they're providing feedback cycles through formative and summative assessments to take students from where they are, whether that's below grade level standard or above grade level standard, and move them forward. Now, the flaw in that plan has been what you've been hearing from me for the last year and a half. They have been doing that in addition to home growing their curricular resource. So they have been pulling from here and pulling from there and putting kids on, we have ST Math during application time. And that's a really heavy lift. And so this year, we are piloting a curricular resource. You're going to hear about that. Well, I think you already heard about it. They're piloting Zern as their first curricular resource, and then they'll be moving to piloting Desmos, two highly rated resources. And we know that again, when teachers have the ability to run that model, a workshop approach, where I can differentiate my instruction, I can scaffold up, and they're not busy curating the curriculum, that allows them to do that other stuff, the differentiation, really, really well. It's what we saw happen in our integrated 1 math classrooms. They had a curricular resource. They weren't spending their time pulling, creating. They could spend their time differentiating. And so we're more in favor of that than in favor of creating the honors track, the low track, the regular track, because there's a lot of evidence that suggests that when we start to track students into those tracks, they don't move out. They stay on that track as they move through school. Additionally, when we start to track kids according to those ability levels at a very young age, starting in 5th, 6th grade, we start to see evidence about social emotional well-being. We start to see things like our math perception survey data that says, I'm not good at math. I can't be good at math. I've been in this low track my whole time in school. And so our approach has been, we want to have this integrated approach. We know that we have students who are well beyond the grade level proficiency, and we want to have an option for them, which is that additional, right? You're going to move into that higher track. But the more tracks you offer, the more, right, that pathway becomes for the student, like, this is my pathway. And the earlier that starts, that does impact student identity. And so we haven't moved in that direction. I think you had another question about, AP pre-calc. The AP College Board did announce that it is going to be coming out with an official AP pre-calc course. So we will be putting that in front of you for implementation in the 24-25 school year. So on your matrix where you see pre-calc year-long, that will eventually, for the 24-25 school year, be replaced with AP pre-calc. To Dr. Piasek's point, we know that for many of our students, that will be a huge value add. We know we'll have students who want to take that course, perhaps even in lieu of that integrated 3 with TRIG. We don't view that as a bad thing. Again, that's an option for them, and we're okay with that.
So let me just clarify, though, because the integrated 3 with TRIG is Algebra 2 and elements of pre-calc, the TRIG elements of pre-calc.
Correct.
So if they move from integrated 2 to AP pre-calc, they're actually missing Algebra 2.
They wouldn't move from integrated 2 to pre-calc. They would move
I thought you
from-
just said that. That might be an option instead of integrated 3.
Nope, they would move from integrated 2 to, they could take integrated
3.
math
Yeah, they
3
would have
with
to.
TRIG.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just misunderstood you. I apologize.
No, it's good.
So, I think that's something that we really have to think through, right? Because there's either the group that's taking these 2 Whopper classes together without any AP weighting, and there's another group that's going to take maybe an easier class, integrated math 2 with statistics, and then AP pre-calc with a weighted grade. So again, I think that's where I'm concerned that this integrated math 3 with TRIG is going to basically de-incentivize students from going through that path, because it's much harder, and our highest achieving students are the ones that are going to probably be chasing those AP weighted grades. But
I'll say this about that pathway. So if you look up here, right, again, small population of students that we have that might be ready to take this integrated math 3 with TRIG, let's just say their sophomore year, okay? They, again, would have the option, so you see this dotted arrow, they have the option, should they so choose, right? I'm not ready, this course, to your point, Dr. Piasek, like, this was really rigorous, and it went really fast, and I need to review concepts. They have the option of going back into a full pre-calc course, full year-long pre-calc course, their junior year. And then their senior year, taking that AP Calc. Again, this course right here will eventually, in the 24-25 school year, be replaced with, per board approval, I should say, with AP pre-calc. But what I want to share that I think is important is we do have a significant number of students, and I can have Stacy, we're actually approving them right now, our ECCP applications. And we have a significant number of students who sign up to take Calc 3, Calc 4, and Calc classes that I can't even pronounce at the collegiate level because they have exhausted our Calc pathways. And so while it might only be a small number of students who are taking this accelerated track, that would be integrated math 3, AP Calc AB, AP Calc BC, we do have a group of students that's on that track right now. And then they're because of the way ECCP works, early college credit now, they can earn up to 18 college credits before they graduate high school. They're able to take advantage of that program to take really rigorous high-level college classes before they leave us. And so again, we can get you those numbers. We're going through the applications right now, and we do have a group of students, and I know the concern, right? We don't want students driving across town. We don't want students, right, being told, well, only 3 of you signed up in this school, so you've got to take it via WebEx. I know those concerns. Those are things that we will monitor over time. And just like with all of our course offerings, we have closed courses that we have had historically in the books. We've opened sections. This isn't a forever pathway. This is right now what we think is in the best interest of our students going into the 23-24 school year.
So if I could maybe just continue for a second. Thank you. I understand all the points that you're making. And I do think we need options for those super high achieving students, but I don't think that should be the basis of what we're designing, but we need to have a path to serve them.
Yeah.
And we agree that not having classes offered at all 3 of our high schools or not uniformly is a problem.
Yep.
So I think it's tough to try to counsel some of these kids up to Calc BC when there won't be a class for them. And we need to think about that because that affects grade point averages and affects college applications. So there's a scenario that I keep thinking about, and that is a freshman who took integrated math 1 as an 8th grader, who's in integrated math 2. They're a high achieving math student. They could potentially be in integrated math 2 with, let's say, a junior who maybe didn't pass integrated math 2, who's taking it again. Because we don't have an honors pathway, we don't have an accelerated pathway. How does that class work for both of those students?
So I would say two things with that. One is, I would say our counselors do a pretty good job of looking at scheduling when they're looking at students who fail courses. If a student fails a course in its entirety, we typically try and schedule that group of students together so that we're not seeing just, right, the one junior or the one senior. The second piece I would say is that, again, through our teachers' differentiated approach to instruction with the curricular resource, we are able, in our most ideal state, to differentiate that curriculum so that the junior is getting what he or she needs and the sophomore, right, is getting what he or she needs. So our teachers, right, even before an honors track, right, they have a span of skill level this wide in their classrooms. Kids are coming to them across the board in any content area with multiple, right, skills, abilities, background knowledge. And so that's where we do rely on them to say, that's the art of teaching, right? How do you meet kids where they are and grow them from there? But again, in terms of strategic placement, our counselors do work very hard to make sure that we don't have classes where we're sitting with that significant span of differentiation.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate your just your openness to answer a lot of these questions. And The last thing I just wanted to share is I did look around at our neighboring districts just to understand a little bit around who is utilizing integrated math, what they're doing in high school with different offerings. The one model that I guess kind of stuck out to me, and not many are, there are not many who have gone down this path of doing integrated math. And I suspect, if and or when there are changes at the DPI level, everybody will kind of move in that direction. But the one district that caught my attention was Pewaukee, that does offer an accelerated path from sixth grade all the way through. Mm-hmm. So they have a 6-7, 7-8, and then a 1-2 and a 2-3. And then they go to pre-calc. And I'm not saying that that's the right answer, but I guess what I'm saying is it can be done, or at least there's evidence, even in a smaller district, that it can be done. And so if I can leave us with maybe just my one major point is that I don't believe that this integrated system that we're looking at here gives us the flexibility to serve all students where they are. I feel like we're putting people in boxes, and it's not as flexible as maybe we'd like to believe that it is on paper, and I don't think that this helps us accelerate students. I think it actually might hold them back a little bit. With that, I do think the quantitative reasoning class is a great option for a third math offering in high school. I'm just not convinced on the integrated 3 recommendations.
We did obviously look at neighboring school districts. I can share that on November 9th, Agile Mind, and we will be hosting a spotlight, I guess you would call it, where we will be inviting some of our neighboring school districts to come and see what we're doing. The integrated approach is something, again, that is, I would say, up and coming. It's new, and because the new standards have been released, most of the districts, again, I meet with a lot of the Waukesha County directors. COVID set back a lot of the curricular revisions. Most districts have just been finishing up with social studies based on that those new standards. But math is coming up for many of them, and so we will be hosting that for districts to see what we're doing.
And what is the reason for that? I'm curious. Are they asking us to, or why are we hosting that?
We are offering that up, yeah. So I have a lot of my colleagues at the director level asking, like, what are you doing? We're hearing about this. And again, the state is really, the new state standards really are aligned to an integrated approach. And so as other districts are embarking on their curricular revisions, this integrated approach is something that I think you're going to see more of. So while you haven't seen it yet, I think it's something that you will see.
I appreciate the committee's flexibility in letting me kind of fire away. But. Anyone else? Any other comments? Okay. Well, we do have agendized 3 opportunities for action tonight. And that's all we have left on the agenda other than other business. So do we feel like we need more time? Are there other questions? Ms. Kozlowski.
I'm not sure if time to review is the correct answer, at least for me. I'm really stuck on, I think this is premature for our district. I don't think we're ready. I don't think our students are ready. And we are, even if we take a look at the recent forward exam, we have 70% of our students that we're not ready, right? And so if that's going to take us a while to get through, how do we get them? We're talking fundamental skills that we've got to get them at before we can start expecting them to come in. So our next year freshmen have suffered learning loss. How far behind are we? I don't know. But based on the data that we're seeing, students, COVID did amplify it a little bit, but this decline has been here for 10 years. We have bigger things to start to focus on re-engaging in the elementary level, preparing, and I agree with everything that we're saying. There's good pieces to this that look great. I think it's setting up students, but it's setting up a very small amount of students, and I've got a core population that just is not going to be able to follow this path. That I really just struggle with that. So for me, this isn't a time issue. This is I don't think as a district we're ready to go down this path.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, just so I understand? When you say this path, are you suggesting, or you're saying they're not ready to choose between the quantitative reasoning, this integrated 3 with statistics, or the integrated 3 with trig?
I think as a student, they're not, when we had talked earlier, you had mentioned, and it resonated with me when you're talking about math perceptions, right? Because I get that. I definitely know what it would be like to be a student who thinks that they're not good at math, and they very well could be.
Yep.
But that process and that engagement starts much earlier. At this point, we have to try to corral and get back to where we can get through the basic fundamentals. When I start talking about career ready, there's a lot of stuff that does happen in the college levels that is building you for your careers on taking these additional classes. And as much as I would love to really dig in for our high achievers and gifted and talented, we still have to find a way to support them. But 70% of our students are nowhere near ready to follow anywhere this path is going. And I can't, with comfort, I just can't put something out there that I think is actually going to further delay some of our students. And I do agree, we also have to meet our high achievers with these paths. I do like that we're focusing on piloting at the elementary level, right? I don't like self-curating, you know that, I've talked a lot,
Yep.
I don't like that.
Yep.
But that's where this has to start before we can get to a secondary appeal, that we can give them that path. We've got to get them fundamentally understanding of, we hear a lot about it, but it is back to the basics.
So we might just need to clarify, though, Carrie, that the 6, 7, 8, and integrated 1 and 2 curriculum have already been approved. But the discovery for me, after going through integrated 3, was that there's no differentiation at those levels. It's those latter rungs. Is, not to put words in your mouth, but is that kind of what you're referring to, that everybody's on the same track?
It is.
Okay.
And I do recognize that is in play, but the adding on at the next level, we're not there yet. Test scores are showing it, achievement is showing it, student engagement is showing it. I don't have all of the answers for sure, but I think this is premature.
So, just looking for other questions. So Rachel, maybe if I could clarify, without one of these 3 options, a student that completes integrated math 2, that still has another math credit for high school, would have the option still of either algebra 2.
Algebra 2, honors algebra 2, AP stats, any of our, yes. Right now, we would have to go back and look. We rewrote our board policy, and we took out the language of specific courses. And so algebra 2 and honors algebra 2 would no longer be required as that third math credit, the way in which the former policy was written. That was the third math credit, and so right now it would be integrated 1 and integrated 2 that are required, and then that third credit would be, again, it could be algebra 2, it could be honors algebra 2, it could be AP stats, it could be pre-calc, it could be any of those options.
Thank you. Mr. Zenobia?
Thank you. I have a clarifying question. I'm not sure who to direct it to. What I hear from the committee is that we already have, as is stated, we have this plan in place for middle school and the first 2 years. Our concern as a committee, from what I'm hearing tonight, is that, for lack of better explanation, we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves or our students into this, third choice, third rung, without having more information about how they will choose their path to some degree. I guess my question is, because we don't have this in place, and we would like to put this in place for next year, what do we have in front of us that says, I guess it would be predictive as to where our students are going to go? If we say we had this approved,
Sure.
how are we predicting, okay, we know that, X amount of students are going to go for the trigonometry, and do we have a sense of that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So the team, once these courses would be approved, we really grappled with the integrated 3 with trigonometry, putting for the first time ever, right, a course prerequisite in terms of students have to get a B or higher, for example, in integrated math 2, and that would be, right, like our starting point for that student score. If a student received that, we would recommend them to take that course. Instead, what we have done is we're going to be developing kind of a list of criteria that we would give to our counselors and to the teachers for each of the courses. And that would be what we would use to guide students, teachers, families, et cetera. And then that would also be available in our course guide with these courses that goes out to families in December. So that is still under development, those criteria, but it would really be, again, specific to criteria around both the course as well as, student disposition, et cetera.
Just to follow up on that, it seems to me that if we took more time, or even if this didn't end up going through the way we had planned, it gives students more choices. Is that fair, or?
It absolutely gives students more choices, and I think, right, like we know right now, I could predict that integrated math 3 with trigonometry is going to have the fewest amount of students. Most of our students are going to pick either quantitative reasoning and advanced applications or integrated math 3 with statistics. That will be what 90% of our students choose to go into, one of those 2 courses. And so we know that, just based on, again, our achievement numbers, looking at our students' performance. Again, speaking to Carrie's point about where students are currently achieving, like we know that those 2 courses are going to be predominantly where students land. But to your point, Mr. Zenobia, yes, this pathway does offer, in our opinion, a choice for all students in our system. It offers a choice for our students who, again, they don't need an Algebra 2. It offers a choice for our students who are looking for that highly accelerated pathway, and it offers our students who are right in that kind of middle of the road an option. It kind of encapsulates everybody.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not seeing any indication that somebody's interested in taking an action. Would you agree? So I think we maybe need to reconsider some of the integrated math 3. I think the pre-calc is a variable that we need to understand, and whether or not that's part of integrated math 3 and what that looks like for different groups of students with different capabilities. We do need to resolve this, though, and we need to probably come to some conclusion here in the next month so we can move forward.
Yeah, our course guide is November, December. Yeah, so I would need to come back by November so that we need to have our courses for next year established by November.
So I know it's not customary for Chair to put a motion on the table, but I would make a motion to approve the quantitative reasoning and math applications course.
I would second that.
There be any further discussion about that? All right, well, let's see how that goes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, one opposed. Mrs. Kozlowski, thank you. So 4-1, so we have the quantitative reasoning course approval that we can take to the board, which is good. I think that gives us an option, and then we can consider what to do about the math, or the integrated Math 3 offerings. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So the next item on our agenda is items for future committee discussion. Any suggestions? Mrs. Kozlowski.
Thank you, Dr. Piasek. So as I was hinting on earlier, I would like for us to add a section that is a recurring item on our T&L agenda. If I would take a look at what I would like that to look like, I would like it to be achievement. We can get crafty with the title, but I would like for us to have recurring discussions about items related to achievement. And when I thought through this, I'm not trying to talk about KPIs. I'm talking about items such as recent testing scores, the recent forward exams, or the ACT Aspire. It'd be stuff for us to talk about because when we looked at those scores, they're horrible. I'd like to talk about learning loss, any teaching and learning applicable apps, which was a request that I put out there for last month. And thank you, Dr. Siebert and Steve, for coordinating through that. That was very good. I believe from what I've looked at, there is 72 apps per se that are under the category of teaching and learning. I don't think it's technically 72 because you'll have several things that are with the same first name and different version of X, Y, and Z. So I don't think but I think it is time for us just to take a look at it. I was very pleased with the overall review. And so for all of us who got excited about the data, it was about 308 additional apps, again, but a very good review for me to see. I was happy with that, but it's time for teaching and learning to take a look at the different pieces that are in there. And let's talk about learning loss. I'd like to hear about, we talk enough about it, how are things going, where are we seeing progress outside of KPIs? And there may not, this could be a fluent agenda item, but I want to talk about achievement. And one other recommendation that we have within taking a look at this would to be talking about library book purchases. So on a monthly basis, have a report that talks about what books have been purchased across our district over the course of the month. Not asking to approve it, I'm just asking for something that gives visibility into what we are taking a look at. But I do want us to have a separate discussion of achievement updates and progress.
Thank you, Carrie. Anything else? I mean, I would reiterate that. I think whenever we have test scores available across the system, we should probably be taking a look at those. So the Aspire would be good. And Mrs. Landish, we can kind of decide on the pacing on this, but I think it would be good timing to review maybe our fine arts curriculum, music and art, and we could take them separately. But just looking at K-12, what we're offering, what our staff load looks like, how kids are kind of moving up all the way through high school. I know there was some impact to that programming coming out of 2020 and 21. And then the other thing that I would like to have some discussion on is our gifted and talented program, if we could. Anything else? Okay. Well, short agenda, long meeting, but thank you all for your time, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.